think we've done good and important things together.
Blinken, Secretary of Genocide, Butcher of Lashed.
258, we have a disruption.
As well as State Department and USAID employees.
Stop killing kids in Gaza. Like you. I have young kids. You're a father. Are you in the house? You can sleep at night when you're killing so many kids.
Committee will suspend while the Capitol Police.
Over those 2 decades.
You scum! The blood of your victims will spill.
Committee will come to order.
We will never let you forget.
Committee will.
Which tail number? You mean there's more than one plane you guys are blocking? Are you freaking kidding me? And then your State Department wanted to deny it, and here today you won't even acknowledge the truth of that. It's disgusting.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Meeks, distinguished colleagues on this committee. First of all, let me just say I have very much appreciated working with you these past 4 years, working with the ranking member. I think we've done good and important things together.
Blinken, Secretary of Genocide, Butcher of Lashed.
258, we have a disruption.
Remind the audience members, disruption of committee proceedings is against the law. Holding up signs or making verbal outbursts during the proceedings is disruptive and will not be tolerated. Any disruption will result in a suspension of the proceedings until the Capitol Police can restore order. This includes the raisings of hands and other forms of disruption. With that, I now recognize the Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to say how much I've valued and appreciated working with you these past 4 years, the dialogue that we've had, including with this committee, where we've agreed, where we've disagreed, including on Afghanistan. I want to recognize everyone who served in Afghanistan, including on this committee. Our thoughts are with the Gold Star families of the 2,461 American service members, as well as State Department and USAID employees.
Stop killing kids in Gaza. Like you. I have young kids. You're a father. Are you in the house? You can sleep at night when you're killing so many kids.
Committee will suspend while the Capitol Police restore order to this committee. The gentleman will continue.
As I said, our thoughts are with all of the Gold Star families. They're with the State Department and USAID employees who lost their lives over the course of 20 years of our military involvement in Afghanistan. And I think today especially of the 13 heroes that we lost at Abbey Gate, and I deeply regret that we did not do more and could not do more to protect them. And to those families who are here with us today, you're in my thoughts, in my prayers. I wish that Nicole was here with us today. I'm deeply sorry that she's not. I'm also deeply grateful to the dedicated professionals from the State Department, from the Defense Department, from across the government, from civil society, other partners who did so much to support the people of Afghanistan over those 2 decades.
You scum! The blood of your victims will spill.
Committee will come to order.
We will never let you forget.
Committee will suspend while the Capitol Police restore order.
Fucking slayer!
Committee will come to order. The gentleman will continue.
Thank you. I'm here today to continue the Department's extensive cooperation with this committee. As you know, Mr. Chairman, the Department's provided over 20,000 pages of documents to you. We've conducted 9 high-level briefings for members. We facilitated transcribed interviews for more than 15 people. I personally testified before the House and Senate committees 14 times with questions on Afghanistan, including 4 times before this committee. Now, I believe that any attempt to understand and learn from the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan has to be put in the proper context of what preceded it, both in terms of the 2 decades following 9/11 and the decisions and events of 2020 to 2021 that culminated in the removal of our personnel. When President Biden took office, he inherited an agreement the previous administration had reached with the Taliban to remove all U.S. forces from Afghanistan by May 1st of 2021. At U.S. insistence, the Afghan government had released 5,000 Taliban prisoners, including top war commanders. The United States reduced our own troop levels from 14,000 to 2,500 in December of 2020. In return, the Taliban agreed to stop attacking U.S. and partner forces, to refrain from threatening Afghanistan's major cities, and to pursue intra-Afghan negotiations toward a ceasefire and a political settlement. But it continued a relentless march in the countryside so that it controlled or actively contested territory containing 3/4 of Afghanistan's population by December 2020. In January 2021, the Taliban was in the strongest military position it had been in since 9/11, and we had the smallest number of U.S. forces in Afghanistan since 2001. Despite the profound effects of the Doha Agreement, President Biden ultimately opted to implement the previous administration's decision to withdraw American troops and honor his pledge to end our nation's longest war. To the extent President Biden faced a choice, it was between ending the war or escalating it. Had he not followed through on his predecessor's commitment, attacks on our forces and allies would have resumed, and the Taliban's assault on the country's major cities would have commenced. That would have required sending tens of thousands more U.S. forces back into Afghanistan to defend ourselves and prevent a Taliban takeover, with at best the prospect of restoring a stalemate and remaining stuck in Afghanistan under fire indefinitely. President Biden inherited a deadline, but no plan to meet it. At his direction, beginning in the spring of 2021, the administration, and the State Department in particular, engaged in extensive planning for a whole range of outcomes. We pursued a sustained campaign to urge any Americans in Afghanistan to leave. We restarted and dramatically increased resources to what had been a moribund special immigrant visa program to bring Afghans who had worked by our side over 20 years to the United States. Even the U.S. government's most pessimistic assessments did not anticipate that the Afghan government and security forces would collapse so rapidly in the face of Taliban advances. Nevertheless, because of the administration's extensive interagency planning and coordination, when Kabul fell on August 15th, the United States was able to evacuate our embassy and relocate our diplomats to the airport within 48 hours, and then conduct the largest airlift in U.S. history, helping approximately 120,000 Americans, Afghans, and citizens of allied nations depart Afghanistan in just 2 weeks. In the 3 years since the end of our country's longest war, all of us, including myself, have wrestled with what we could have done differently during that period and over the preceding 2 decades. I asked retired Ambassador Dan Smith, one of our most senior diplomats, to lead an after-action review of the State Department's actions between January 2020 and August 2021. In response to Ambassador Smith's report, the Department has taken more than 40 concrete initiatives and identified steps to guide our response to future crises. The actions we've taken have already made a difference in subsequent emergencies, including in Sudan, in Israel, in Lebanon. Even as we work to address the places where we fell short, I firmly believe the President's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan was the right one. American troops are no longer fighting and dying in Afghanistan. The American people are safer and more secure. In fact, many of the most pessimistic predictions have been thoroughly disproven. We were told Afghanistan would once again become a haven for terrorists, and that, as the majority report contends, we would be all but blind to the situation on the ground. In fact, al-Qaeda, the group that attacked us on 9/11, has not regrouped in Afghanistan, and in August 2022, we launched a precision strike in downtown Kabul that took out its leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, with no American boots on the ground. We were told that our allies would no longer trust us. Well, having just returned from more NATO meetings in Brussels and my 20th trip to the Indo-Pacific as Secretary of State, it's clear that our alliances, our partnerships, are stronger today than they've been in a generation. You can see that in the more than 50 countries that we brought together to defend Ukraine against Russia's ongoing aggression, and in the unity of purpose and action that we built for contending with the challenges posed by China. We were told hundreds of Americans and Afghan partners would be left behind. Yet today, every U.S. citizen who told us that they wanted to leave during the evacuation has now had the opportunity to do so. And to those Americans who entered the country since August 2021 and have been detained by the Taliban, we will not rest until we bring you home. Since September 2021, the administration has resettled more than 185,000 Afghans. We've approved or welcomed to the United States more than 68,000 Afghans under the Special Immigrant Visa Program. That is nearly half of all of the SIVs issued since the program's inception in 2009. This is a profoundly difficult period for the Afghan people, especially Afghanistan's women and girls. But I believe the final chapter has not been written on Afghanistan. Just last week, I had the chance to be with many partners who supported the evacuation effort, including members of Congress. We were joined by a resilient and resourceful young woman who left Afghanistan in August 2021 and is now an aerospace engineering student at MIT. She aspires to be the first Afghan woman astronaut. In part because of our two-decade commitment to Afghanistan, there are many more women who have the opportunity to go to school, to connect with the wider world, to imagine a different life for themselves. And these women, their experiences, their hopes, will, I know, one day help pave a path to an Afghanistan where all people can actually choose their own futures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, I want to review a couple dates. First, on February 29, 2020, the Trump administration signed the Doha Agreement with the Taliban. The agreement promised a conditions-based incremental withdrawal, and the Trump administration delayed that withdrawal precisely because those conditions were not being met. On April 11th, 2021, the go-to-zero presence in Afghanistan was given by the Biden administration, and that was given freely by the administration, despite not being in compliance with the Doha Agreement. Your own Deputy Assistant Secretary Mark Evans testified before this committee that the decision to go to zero was not contingent upon the Doha Agreement. Secretary, one of the dates I really want to focus on is July 8th, 2024. That's the date that the total withdrawal was finalized by the administration, and the date certain. It's shifted from a conditions-based to a date certain. Is that correct?
The date certain was there, I believe, starting in April, when the president said we would follow through on the withdrawal that the previous administration had agreed to, except it was extended from May 31st to September.
So it was always going to be date certain, not conditions based.
Well, that was what the
So that's
Doha
what
agreement.
look. That's what you said. So when you made that decision, did the State Department block American citizens from departing from the airfield in Mazar-e-Sharif, Afghanistan?
Absolutely not.
They didn't.
blocked
Who
American
did
citizens.
then? Who blocked them?
I'm not aware of blocking any U.S. citizens. On the contrary, we were doing
You
everything
know
possible
they were
to get
blocked.
citizens
You
out.
know they were blocked.
I'd be happy to look at any information you have on that. I'm not aware of any American citizens who were blocked. And in fact, we were doing everything possible. And by the way, I want to thank you and thank every member who's been involved in this and the work that they did to get
Mr.
Americans
Secretary,
out.
your State Department blocked American citizens and Afghan allies from leaving there. I personally worked with your State Department during those days. I have the emails, I have the photographs of American blue passport holding American citizens who were on the airfield awaiting departure that got clearance for safe third countries to depart to, and the order came down from the United States government. Was it the State Department?
I'm not aware of any such orders. I'm happy to follow up and look at that. I'm certainly not aware of it. We were doing everything possible.
Last
to
year,
get
Colonel
Americans out.
Francis Hong, my classmate, testified before this committee that due to the fiasco in Kabul, many Americans and allies were forced to conduct a dangerous 400-mile journey to Mazar-e-Sharif Air Base, where they were delayed for weeks. Colonel Hong testified, quote, that we spent 3 weeks hiding these nearly 400 people from the Taliban, keeping them alive and fed using funds from American donors. All this while the State Department delayed and frankly blocked American citizens from leaving. Secretary Blinken, I have communications, as I said, that show this happened. And you're saying that didn't happen?
Why would we block Americans from
That's the
leaving
problem
Afghanistan?
I have. I
Why?
had it at the time. Why?
Possible to get
And
them out,
here's
but
the
I'm
thing,
happy-
Mr.
happy to look at
Secretary.
the information.
As I was working with your State Department while you were Secretary of State and relaying this information, someone said to me, which tail number? Which tail number? You mean there's more than one plane you guys are blocking? Are you freaking kidding me? And then your State Department wanted to deny it, and here today you won't even acknowledge the truth of that. It's disgusting. To try to blame this on Donald Trump when we all know there is no way that anyone forced you guys to do the dumbest thing possible. You don't have to have worn our nation's uniform like I and other people did to know that first you get the civilians out, then the military, not the other way around. This has to be one of the dumbest, most poorly executed paths to depart any country possible. My only hope is that in the 11 embassy evacuations that have happened on your watch, an unprecedented number, you've somehow gotten better at it. It's appalling to see you sit here and say, oh, I express sympathy, and yet have never acknowledged the failures or own the consequences of it. In fact, to this date, the only person that's been fired was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps who spoke out. None of you have been held accountable. None of you even expressed shame or embarrassment. Have you learned anything? Have you learned anything from this?
First of all, on the planes, just to come back to it, the Taliban was blocking planes. We worked to clear them. And I'm happy to go over that with you, with your office, and also to see any information you have to make sure that we get to the bottom of what you're saying. But we were certainly not in the business of blocking Americans. We were in the business of getting them out.
Well, I appreciate
and
you
continuing
did
to do
create a
that.
position after that to address the problem. So you clearly had to be aware of it. You created a position to facilitate the coordination after you left them behind.
Of course, we were determined to get every American who wanted to get out, and that didn't
Gentlemen,
stop on August 31st.
gentlemen yields.
We got 500 Americans out
Chair
between then and the end of the year
recognizes
because of that
Mr.
ongoing commitment.